welcome to the Gig School podcast, talking all things gigs and bookings, agents, musicians, and we've got a very special guest here with us. We've got Jamie from Slim Jim Enterprises, and it's such an honour to have you here today.
Lovely you to say so. It's great to be here. Thank you.
I'm fangirling a little bit because I'm like, you've just been doing this forever.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's been occupational based from the moment I started, and it's just nice to be able to do it some 40 years later and still be in the game, which is great.
Wow, 40 years.
Well, it's 40 years and still since I made a decision to follow the arts.
Yeah.
And things that were encompassing the arts. So it's not just music, but there's I've had a fairly broad canvas to work with for a lot of years.
Were you doing something else before you were into the arts? Was it?
Not really. So I finished school at year 12, did the TAE, and gained entrance to WAIT back then, which is now Curtin University. And my focus was going to be journalism, but you need to find another alternative subject in the English regime of courses. And I thought, a bit like school, drama would be less homework.
Yeah.
So I went and did the theatre. I joined up to theatre arts as my minor. So I did journalism as the major, theatre arts as the minor. But as I got involved in theatre arts, I realised that wasn't going to be that as easy as what the drama classes were, which were mostly elective when I was at school. Now it's taken as part of your, a leaving subject matter, like music is now as well. It never was back in my day, which is so I finished school in 1980. I did my TAE in 1980. Started at Curtin, or WAIT, I should say, in 81. So I started off doing the major in journalism, the minor. You had to take some prerequisite courses in literature, language, and culture, and then you could really make up your mind about which subject you wanted to follow. So I ended up increasing my thoughts on theatre arts. Did the mandatory journalism thing just to get that as part of the degree, but my love for theatre arts grew from there basically.
Wow!
And prior to that, I started guitar lessons at the age of 4 with a chap that lived as a neighbour nearby, and he was a very profoundly good jazz guitarist back from the 50s and 60s in Western Australia.
Amazing.
Big band jazz. And then through my schooling, I went to a convent in Jundana, St Dennis's, and they held auditions for St Mary's Cathedral Boys Choir. And so I joined the choir, and that also meant you gained entrance to Trinity College. So I started there in year 4 and stayed there in the choir till year 12. So I had a lot of classical pre-education before I went to theatre, with vocals in particular. And the musical director for the choir was extraordinary. Her name was Annette Girk, and she's still an adjudicator now at UWA for classical.
Oh, wow.
And an extraordinary artist, and she's internationally recognised as one of the greatest organists in the world. So we were in really good hands. And between the guitar teacher and Annette Girk, there was Cliff Adams and Annette Girk, I was always able to read music, which also made the fundamentals of getting involved in theatre, and then obviously musical theatre made it a lot easier to sort of take those skills on board with what you did. And so when I finished uni at the end of 84, I was able to gain a lot of work in theatre for about 2 years straight. I was almost employed full time. Toad Toad Hall, Annie. A lot of fringe type shows, which weren't fringe back then. They were sort of like experimental theatre, probably the best way to put it. But I could actually see there was a massive recession incumbent in Australia, and it was pretty obvious that all the funding that went to all the theatre companies at that time was going to fall over, which means anybody that was doing, say, rough estimate, 10 productions per annum, they were going to be trimmed down to 3 or 4, which means the opportunities were less than half. And of course, opportunities were there when I was a younger fellow in the first 2 years after leaving uni. But you could certainly see there was going to be a massive difference in those opportunities coming up. And so as an adjunct of, or a way of sidestepping the recession, I I was involved in a couple of cabarets with a chap called Dave Warner, Dave Zampatti, and Eddie Robertson. They were doing dinner theatre shows at the Burragoon Hotel, which doesn't even exist now. And we did Flappers, Broadway, Babylon or Bust. We did a version of Cabaret, the musical Cabaret, but these were all hybrid dinner shows. And I was involved either on stage or in production for them. And there was another show that they had that used to travel into the bush. In those days, it was on a two-prop Cessna flying to Telfer, which took nearly 9 hours to fly to Telfer in those days. Now I think it's about 4 or 5 hours if you're lucky. And so I got sort of familiar with the band that came on the road to perform that show. And so when things started looking awkward with the recession, I decided to start Slim Jim and the Fats in June 1986.
Wow, and that was your band.
And that was it. And that's why it started out of necessity, because if you wanted to keep performing, at least you were able to create your own fate.
Yeah.
And at the time, the industry in Western Australia was extremely buoyant when it came to live music. So the average band in those days was like you'd work from Wednesday to Sunday. Wednesday you might be in Kalgoorlie. Thursday you might be in Kambalda. You might come back to Northam on the Friday, and then you go and play your residencies on the weekend. Wow. But most bands were working 3 major residencies a week.
Did you book those directly with the venues?
No, in those days there was no way of existing without representation.
Oh, so you had an agent back then?
You basically had to from the outset.
Wow, who was your agent?
A Rock Exchange. And we got a manager, so we did our own show in June '86 at a place called Chevron Nightclub, which is then became Alligators, and now apparently it's called the Doll's House, which is like a strip club.
Doll's House.
On Charles Street, North Perth. And we invited every agent in Perth. And the only person that rocked up was David Zampatti, who I had a relationship with doing the dinner theatre shows.
Wow.
And Dave Warner, by the way, was a very famous Western Australian songwriter and music artist that gained huge national recognition in his day. He was his biggest hit was Suburban Boy, but he had Wimbledon, he had many, many hits, and is still producing as a writer and also as a musician now. So David had a great eye for music and was the only guy that we invited to this opening gig to take us on, and he took us straight into the Rock Exchange.
Fantastic.
And actually one of the partners in the Rock Exchange only died in recent months, and I did his eulogy a couple of weeks ago. And but that was a very buoyant time, and most of the acts that were working in that time, so the bands that were playing were things like the Flying Fonzarellis, the Frames, the Jets, Flash Harry, and many others of that sort of ilk. But they were a million a year plus turnover bands.
Really?
Really.
Whoa.
And this is the days when everybody played a door charge.
I can't even
So the average door
understand that.
charge was $5.
Wow.
And locally, and they were playing at venues that had a capacity of in excess of 1,000 people per night.
Wow. I've heard of this whole band in the 80s, and it was this massive thing. Like,
Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
Well, you can
because
work-
it's so hard to get anyone
Well,
to come
if
to
you
a
multiply
gig.
1,000 by 5, that's obviously,
Yeah.
$5,000. It's $5,000 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 52. And that was just on a standard three gig a week regime.
Why do you think it was such a boom for the bands? Back then?
Isolation. And there was no internet and so forth. And honestly, if you want to be really brutal about it, how do you meet girls?
Oh, okay.
So it was the forum to actually meet
Oh, that
members
was
of the opposite
Tinder.
sex or the same sex.
That was Tinder back then.
It was exactly right. So there was no other opportunity.
Oh, okay.
The only singles thing was in the back of some pretty seedy newspapers
Yeah.
or articles, and there was no internet or Tinder or whatever they do to meet people.
Yeah, that was just the only way people socialised. That's why
Pretty
it was
much.
so huge.
And
Wow.
for example, there was always a gag. So the Raffles Hotel, as you know, is on Canning Highway. So it really is like the most cuspish venue between the northern corridor and the southern corridor. And the answer is, how does a boy from the northern suburbs meet a girl from the southern suburbs? And the answer is the Raffles Hotel. That was it.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So that must have been such an exciting time, such a boom for you. And then it kind of didn't, like that boom of the 80s didn't really last forever. Like how was it
No, we sort of
coming-
came in
coming out
midway
of
to
that?
the end of it. And so a lot of those venues started becoming removed from the marketplace. A lot of it was due to the fact that there was such a density on the weekends at these venues, like the Warwick, the Raffles, the Morley, the Herdsman, the Floriat. There was so many. And then the next generation down may not have been able to have a capacity of 1,000. They'd have a capacity of maybe 750 or 800. So still quite considerable.
Yeah.
And these venues were packing out even on a Thursday night.
Wow.
But, when we first started in our first calendar year, and we only worked 11 months of the year like a normal business, and at that time we were a proprietary limited company where all the members of the band were shareholders, and we worked 246 shows in 11 months.
Wow, that's huge.
Okay, and that was at high-end, huge audience-based venues.
Amazing.
And then the average for the next 9 years was 225 a year. And that was a 4-man road crew with 8 tons worth of gear, lights, sound and staging, and an 8-piece band. Management, an agent. It was a huge
real
business.
deal.
And door
Massive.
girls.
Yeah.
We used to call them door bitches back then, door bitches. But and that was if they were male or female. I was still a door bitch. So we weren't being very particular back then. So there was a fair bit going on. And it was basically we'd rehearse once every fortnight on a Tuesday, and we'd rock up and in a rehearsal room was completely filled with the entire stage contents by the crew. So the crew would go to work on their day off and set it all up. And it was a matter of making sure that the investment in the quality of the act and the standard was going to be sustained as it would be on stage.
Wow, incredible. And I'm just curious, like, when did this start to stop happening? Like, was it the 90s or?
Yeah. So by the time, give it another 10 years, I decided that we got to, from 86 to 96, I realised that the market had changed dramatically. So working 5 nights a week was getting more awkward or less appealing. But we were still at the forefront of performing quite frequently. So we'd always work Wednesday to Sunday. But the thing is, the opportunities were smaller venues, which means it wasn't paying that well. Well, there's other things like technology came into play. Secondly, there was when I started, there was no RBT. And then all of a sudden RBT came in. When I started, the casino had just opened. So all of a sudden there was another alternative that was separate to anything else that you hadn't seen before.
Amazing.
So there was a few things like that, and ironically, I was the first on the first day of the RBT starting in Western Australia. I was driving to the OBH on a Saturday night beside Karrakatta Cemetery with the railway line on my right hand side, and I got pulled over, and all the camera crews of Perth were actually filming the first person being pulled over for RBT, and it was me.
Oh my God.
in my Honda Civic with a couple of friends in the back of the car.
Are you on the news or?
Yeah, it was used as stock footage for the next 2 years.
Oh my God.
So whenever they mentioned RBT, there was me waving in the front of my Honda Civic. It was just embarrassing. But at the time, I don't drink,
new.
so I was never going to get caught.
Yeah.
I've never drunk. So the irony is that they picked me up and I was like it was an uneventful meeting, but they used that stock footage for the next couple of years
how
on the news.
hilarious.
It was.
Oh gosh.
It was hilarious.
Far out. Okay,
So things started to change basically, and there was other alternatives like the Eagles increased of their market value, so sport became a legitimate entertainment component. And I was fortunate enough to have a great experience with the Eagles as the ground announcer for 7 years, and the Dockers 7 years prior to that. So sport did become another form of entertainment that people were investing their money in.
Yeah.
And don't forget also, I suppose you've got to look at the fact that I was 10 years on from when I started. I started at 22. I was now 32. I was preparing to have a family. All the people that I grew up with having families, that means their financial motivation was to build a house, look after their kids, probably not go out so frequently as they were prior to that.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of changes that probably came into play for our band.
Yeah.
But there were other bands that were doing incredibly well at the time. In particular, the J Babies were like the forefront of the new order, so to speak. Animosity was another one that was really huge in the day. The Caper and many others. And the reason why they were coming on was because they were applying themselves to that demographic they were aiming to get, and they were much younger than the ones that we were playing for. So there was, things like that changed, and they were quite happy to play smaller rooms like the Newport, Coronado. There was a range of venues. I can't even remember them off the top of my head
So
now.
were you just operating just your band then for other agents? And then how did you transition to becoming your own agent?
Well, I became quite critical about the treatment that we were receiving from agents. I felt they weren't qualified. So therefore, if any advice they were giving on a financial and or marketing level was completely useless, or it was just following whatever trend was going out there, because there was such a massive amount of money being made. Like everybody could afford to go and put big ads in the newspaper, which was Express magazine back then.
Yeah.
I think the Fats Band was we were the first band to ever have a full colour centre spread in the Express magazine. I mean, you pay for it,
Yeah.
but that's the sort of stuff that we used to have ads at the cinema, like, Val
Wow.
Morgan advertising. We'd be at the cinema, so you'd sit there watching a movie and then our ad would pop up.
Oh, that's incredible.
There'd be ads in the Daily News back then, the West Australian eventually, but mostly it was Daily News and Express. So my point being that we just felt that, anybody that had half a brain and if you had a bit of intelligence, you could actually manage yourself better. And I have to say back then, a lot of money went missing and a lot of it was cash because everybody was paying a cash store.
Yeah, of course.
So feeling that level of betrayal, I suppose,
Yeah.
from certain people was disappointing. And so we went through, I think, 3 managers and 2 agents in a very short spate of time. And I remember sitting down at my house with the entire band and our crew at the time. And I said, well, this is another disappointing situation to be in. We've got another, improper level of behaviour being performed on us. So what do you want to do? And they said, you do it.
Yeah.
And I said, no, I just want to be in a band and
Yeah.
I want to apply myself to my craft. And they said, no, you do it. We trust you. We know you like a brother, so to speak, or as a friend. And we feel that we've got confidence that you will do the right thing by us. And I went, well, that's lovely of you. And then after a bit of debate and a lot of coaxing from the band, I took over the reins of it, of the running of the band that included marketing, wages, booking, every aspect of it. And ironically, within a year or so, other bands that were experiencing the same level of negativity with very poor representation started ringing me and asking me, would you be interested in looking after our band in almost a parallel or a mirror to what you're doing for yourself?
doing.
And I said, no worries.
Wow.
And so it built that way. So everything was built on trust.
Yeah.
And I have to say it's built on trust, transparency in particular. Like everything has to be open. The discussions have to be very open and clear. The financials have to be available to be viewed at any stage, which means sort of high maintenance. So really, that's how really I got involved in the game. I started looking after venues then that were very interested in the bands that I was representing. And then when I finished the band in the original Fats Band in 96, I left the game for about 9 months. I wasn't really interested, but I kept booking. I was working another part-time job with the family business, but I was still booking a little bit at certain venues that I felt I had a relationship with. And that's the other essence of this too, is that I really make sure that whoever I work for and work with, we have a relationship.
Yeah.
No one works for me or has ever worked for me under a contractual situation, be it a venue or an act, and everything's done based on the transparency to make sure they're being satisfied with what their wants and wishes are. So that's the key of it.
Yeah. So many gold nuggets in all the things that you're saying there.
Well, it is, but it's also, you have to understand that with the acts that I had coming on board, for example, I should mention that I went, so at the end of 96, I decided I didn't want to continue with the family business, and I approached the Rock Exchange, who was my original representative when I first started, and they were looking for an agent. And so I said, I'd be interested in taking over one of your departments.
Wow.
So I went there and they gave me the job, told me what the deal was, and I opened, back in those days, they had these massive books. So when you opened them, there'd be like a sheet one side and a sheet, and they were basically the equivalent of what you'd call a spreadsheet now, but they're on large scale books.
Wow. Wow.
And
Printed.
yeah, it was all handwritten.
Handwritten.
Everything was
Wow.
handwritten.
Wow.
And you did it in pencil until the job was actually guaranteed.
Oh, I
And if there was
love
any
it.
variables on that job from the original deal, then you put a sticker over the top of the box and start again. So the
Wow.
point I'm making is that it was very archaic in its style. There was no computers and laptops and spreadsheets and financials. So everything was done, even the ledgers for your finances were done in old school ledgers. So the reason why I'm explaining that is that, so when I walked in and opened the books up, all the pages were blank. And I went, well, where's the acts? And they said, we haven't got any.
Wow.
And I said, where's the booking? Where's the venues? We haven't got any. And within 4 months, I think I've been able to sign up, in my mind, out of the top 15 bands in Western Australia,
Amazing.
I think I had 12 or 13 of the best, most popular bands in Western Australia working for me.
Incredible.
I still kept ownership of my own,
Yeah, that's amazing.
and was certainly amongst that top 13 or out of the 15. And that's really how it worked. And so not only did I benefit and have venues being attracted to the work that I was doing with those bands to book them, it also meant that there was a flow-on effect for the other acts in particular, because only one band can be any one venue on one night of a week.
Exactly. You can only be at one place at a time.
So if you were able to choose well and identify either the next best thing or somebody else that was really good in the game that was going to either, require a bit of marketing prowess or a bit of a lift, that's also became part of the game plan to make sure that you're attracting those sort of bands and they become part of your stable. But then because of the bands and the quality of the bands that we had, there was then also an exponential increase for soloists, duos and trios. And a lot of those solos, duos and trios came actually from the structure of the band itself. So not only did you have the band working 3 to 4 nights a week, but they were also doing Tuesdays and Wednesdays and double gigs on a Friday or Saturday or early gigs or whatever. And for example, one of the bands, while I was at the Rock Exchange, I was there for 7 years. I was there from, I think, late 96 to 2002, I think I was. So one of the bands that came in was like the father, a lovely chap that came all the way from Albany to have a talk to me about his sons and their 2 cousins. And he said, look, we're not from Perth, we're from Albany, no one knows us here. Would you be interested in giving us a go? And I said, absolutely. And that was Murphy's Law. Chris, Courtney and Kieran.
Oh, how beautiful.
Clayton Bolger was in the band, and Jay Rowbotham. And Clayton and Jay were basically relatives of the Murphy clan. And the Murphy boys are still predominantly on my books now for special events and so forth to this very day. And so that shows you how far back it goes.
Wow, that's
So
amazing.
I was there when they did Pop Stars. I was there when they were doing Idol and so forth, and they played at my wedding. You know what I mean?
Aw,
They
that's
played
so
at my
beautiful.
brother-in-law's wedding.
Oh, Chris
So
was
there were-
actually my neighbour when
Is
he
he?
was on Idol. I could see his house from my house.
Right. Well, Kieran, the drummer, their brother, lived next door to me for several years in Kingsley. So we've always been really close, and I think the
beautiful.
world of them. And
Yeah,
that's one of the great
amazing.
success stories, and 3 of the best and most talented, as well as anybody that's been in the band, including Jason Smith and Clayton's now predominantly just a full-time soloist with his 3-piece, which involves Kieran. But, the Rough Houses, I mean, all the different configurations over the years, and they've been incredible, as well as some of the highest profile musicians out of Western Australia.
Superstars.
And extremely good at what they do.
And such lovely people.
They are,
really
absolutely.
Kind people.
But I find that is the case
Yeah.
with all the really good people,
Yes.
because they've got that level of, even if they may have insecurities as an artist, their temperament is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And their discipline, their application towards the craft is also extraordinary.
Yeah. Can I ask, you said soloists and duos started to become popular.
Yeah.
Why do you think that was?
Because there was a huge problem with noise abatement problems at venues, and venues were cutting down to a size which there was a back in the day. I'm going to keep saying it.
Back in my day.
Back in my day, around time that the RBT and the casino started, there was another advent which was almost as significant with a change in the landscape of the music industry, and that was a thing called Brewtech. And Brewtech had these breweries, like these microbreweries that were occurring at the Sail and Anchor and so forth. The Brewery Ale House, which was on Stirling Highway, and they started blossoming. But these venues were there for the love of beer and conversation. So anybody that would be going out and banging out a band song in a 4, 5, 6, 7-piece band, they weren't required any longer. All of a sudden they wanted soloists or duos or acoustic-based stuff, but it also lined up with MTV. So MTV had all these different shows being put together, which are basically acoustic versions, completely acoustic versions of albums. So Eric Clapton did one that was all acoustic, which that alternative version of Layla came from, which is vastly different to the original full band version. Tony Bennett did one, Matchbox 20, Meatloaf. Every artist of significance at that time were doing acoustic versions.
Wow.
And this also led with the conversation pubs that didn't want to have bands playing at their venues, but soloists or duos or acoustic-based stuff. This is where the whole landscape started to change. We used to call them conversation pubs. They don't want music.
Yeah.
They just want something to be
in
like
the background.
atmospheric.
When was that? What time for?
So that would have been about 88 to about 1990.
Oh, wow. That's when they popped up.
They started growing.
Wow.
Yeah. So all those venues started applying themselves to that acoustic thing. So as I got to the end of that first 10 years and started working as an agent, by the time I instituted myself at the Rock Exchange again as nothing else but an agent, that's when I started seeing the demand for solos, duos and trios.
Wow. What would you say is the demand now? Like, what is there the most?
Well, it's one
demand
extreme
for?
to the other since COVID.
Yeah, and then you had COVID.
Yeah, well, COVID's another thing. So COVID's just the curveball that's still delivering issues now.
Gosh, you've been through everything over these decades.
Well, it's ironic. I've been through 2 major recessions, COVID and just about anything else that the world could do, the GFC, but not that it had a profound effect on Australia anyway as a financial crisis.
Yeah.
But the irony is that post-COVID, there is no middle ground now, so it's one extreme to another. There is extraordinarily large amount of work for soloists at the moment.
Yeah.
There's moderate, very minimal, not moderate, but minimal work for duos. There's almost the lowest percentile is for trios, acoustic trios, but major bands that still have a pulling capacity are in unbelievable demand.
Wow, that's great.
So literally from solos to full band market is still as strong as it's ever been. And it's also forced to the, fortunately, I think, and rightly so, it's raised the market value for bands in particular, those that are pulling people in the marketplace currently. And soloists that do have an extraordinary reputation have also increased their market value and can be brave enough to ask for more based on what they're able to bring to that venue on any occasion.
Yeah, so,
May I say though that certain venues are still very resilient to pay market value, blaming the lack of staff and staff levels that affect the level of hospitality they can offer as a venue. But the truth is that certain people go to certain venues and there is a marked difference between bookings for dinner and also money being spent over the bar. And they should be rewarded for doing that.
Yeah.
Ironically, if you make a demand for an increase in their pay and it's refused, the act goes somewhere else. Not as a punishment, but as we'll go somewhere else where we're probably appreciated.
Better.
Okay, we're appreciated.
Yeah.
And ironically, within a few weeks, they're already requesting for that act to come out because they can see the difference that single artist or band can make.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really interesting hearing your experience because, you've just had to be very versatile, when the world changes, when new things
Flexible.
come. Yeah, and adapt. And what does the market want at the moment? Or the market wants bands, or now the market wants soloists, and just give the people what they want.
Yeah, but can I just say, though, at the end of the day, is that even saying the duo market and the trio market aren't that profoundly good at the moment, or even the smaller bands. And a lot of people do smaller acts thinking that it's going to be financially more prudent. That's not the case.
Yeah.
Everything is based on quality.
Yes.
And I have to say to you, if you want confidence as an agent or a manager or as an artist, and you dedicate yourself to your craft and you get it and you listen to what the demands are from the audience, and you acknowledge them, or you respect the opinion of the audience, or at least are able to read what an audience requires. If you always base yourself on quality, you'll never be embarrassed, and you'll always sleep well at night. You've given it your best shot, even then if you've done it like for years and years and years, and you feel that I'm still giving it, but I'm not getting anything back. It's not you're not being driven. You're being driven away from logic. You've given it your best shot. It's not being respected. Go somewhere else. But if you always follow the quality path, to me, it's the best governance of all when it comes to making decisions. It really is.
I love that. So are you still taking acts on?
Sure,
Like, can
all
people
the time.
contact you? How
100%.
How do they get in touch with
They
you?
just, and here's the key thing, because one thing that social media has done, it's made everybody accessible.
Yes.
Okay, at a moment's notice. Just Google search and whoever's, Can I just say, this is what disappoints me. No one ever puts a CV in for a job to say they're crap at what they do.
Yeah.
Okay, so even mediocrity will talk it up based on trying to attract your attention in a CV. But at the end of the day, when you get an agent that gets a quality act, they understand the market value for you immediately. And I'll have to say that in all my years of working, for example, I've been asked many a time, we can't afford your current price. Can you give us a discount? Let's see how it goes for 2 or 3 weeks. And we'll, pay you what you first requested. So the first time I did that, we played at a venue that I went and visited 2 weeks before this residency was going to start. And we were booked for a month. And yes, we did agree to a cheaper price. It was for a Thursday night. And I mentioned the venue because the venue's not there anymore. It was the Coronado on Stirling Highway. Now it's a medical centre. And that Coronado was quite a unique Art Deco building. It was a lovely building with a bit of a car park in the front and out the back, in the middle of Netherlands. So it's a pretty salubrious suburb. And we had a great strength in that Stirling Highway belt, which included Steve's, the Silver Slipper, the Brewery Ale House, the Shenton Park, the Albion, Cagney's on the Terrace, which is now the Claremont Hotel, So there was quite a bit of a scene there, okay? So we agreed to do the job, and we had a lot of strength in that area amongst the universities. And so I went down 2 weeks prior, and whoever was playing there, they were a good band, they were a reasonable band, 4-piece band, and there was 50 people there. So the first week we go there's 150 people there.
Wow.
The second week we go and play, there's 300 plus people there.
Oh my gosh.
The third week we go back and it's packed. There's 3 lines out the door of 3 different entrances of an average of about 30, 40 people.
Gosh.
The following week, the fourth week of the gig, there was at least 75 people queuing up to get in, and it was impossible to get in.
Wow.
So we obviously naturally went back to the venue owner and said, guys, how about us rethinking about this deal? And the guy said, you know what, mate, they're not drinking.
What?
And I went, what? He said, they're not drinking. Well, I was on stage and I could see a drink in every hand, and they weren't exactly behaving as if they were stone cold sober. So we left.
Yeah.
And within 2 weeks of us leaving, they put another cheap band in, they put on the 4-piece band. We were an 8-piece band at the time, but it was the nature of what we did on stage, I think, that kept people coming back. And then there's another 4-piece band playing there that was sort of trying to pick up the momentum of what we created. They were back to 50 people within 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But what disappoints me is that's a grave error in business, whoever ran the venue, management-wise or ownership-wise.
Absolutely.
But no one called me back to say, listen, we got it wrong, come back.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So what I'm getting at is that's why an agent is important, because when from the outset, if you do not strike the correct market value, don't think that venues are going to pay you what you're asking for. I can help you do that because I can assess what you're offering. I can articulate to you what the venues are expecting. For example, there's a huge UK influence, and they're very loyal customers to the venues that they live nearby. So there's a huge expat UK crew in the Northern Corridor, in the Southern Corridor. And if you actually market yourself well to the venues they frequent, obviously you need to play expat UK friendly stuff.
Yeah.
It's as simple as
Makes
that.
sense.
Now, if you start working on that level straight away, you'll endear yourself to that crowd, even if you come from a Anglo-Indian background, Mauritian, Sri Lankan. But as long as you've made the effort, you'll be appreciated. But you're going in at market value. or the perceived market value.
Yeah.
That's where an agent can assist you in that sort of level of guidance. And I have to say that the agent does receive phone calls from their clients, and they're given briefs on they were late, they took too long of breaks,
Yeah.
they're not happy on stage.
Oh,
No,
God.
I'm being serious,
Oh,
right? And for
no.
all the right reasons, wrong reasons. I'm not only there to support you, I'm also there to make sure that I filter this feedback and then find ways of impressing on you on an individual basis. That's a relationship that I think I told you about earlier. You go back to your act that you're representing, and you make sure they're aware of these things without actually directly saying, this venue is not happy. Okay, they don't really want you to come back. Okay, the way I see it is that you can't be everybody's cup of tea, but you must. And the hardest thing in our game for all musicians in the game is not the musicality, the level of musicality that you're expected to deliver. It's the mental strength of making sure you're in the right headspace every time you go to work.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yes.
And that's the same expectation any employer has of their employee.
Yes.
If you're going to come to work, I don't care if you're even selling thick shakes and fries at McDonald's. If you're going to go to work, you're not going to smile. You're not going to be a team player. You're not going to show any energy or an enthusiasm. You get there late and you're looking at your watch to when you can walk out the door on time. No one's going to keep you, are they? Or you're not going to advance yourself in your chosen work or chosen profession. But if you make the extra effort, go the extra yards, that should be appreciated, and you should also be rewarded for that extra effort. I'm a great belief that, even though I standardise my pricing to the market value that's preset or perceived out there, I still have to say those that are showing extraordinary efforts in their game need to be rewarded. And one thing I do actively do is by the assessment of in every 6-month period, I'm assessing where they're at to make sure they are being rewarded for their extra effort, and is it making a difference? So that's another thing that an agent can be really handy for. But again, when it comes to me selling the Fats Man, I'm probably the worst offender. I mean, I can't really walk in and go, I'm great, give me a job. Okay, my band's unbelievable. You know what I mean? It's a bit naff, isn't it? So I'm the worst salesman ever. So we just have to make sure that our reputation and our consistency is our biggest broadcaster.
Yeah.
When it comes to me talking up other artists, I'm a great fan of talent. So that's the first thing. And secondly, I'm meticulously interested in making sure that the equity that a musician deserves is respected by the venue owners. So, for other people, I'm a great advocate.
It's hard to do it for yourself, though.
Very difficult to do it for yourself.
Yeah.
It is. And you probably found it yourself in your own business yourself. It's very difficult sometimes to have that much front. But getting back to the comment about how to contact me, the reason why I brought this up is that I get a lot of people sending me stuff all the time.
Yeah, I bet.
Okay, but here's the other thing too. They're coming to me from other agencies where they've had no relationship with their agent. There's no perceived market value for them. They've accepted whatever was being given to them, rightly or wrongly. And the biggest issue I've got is that, the problem is that the minefield out there has already been laid in the sense that I walk into a venue, and if I'm going to be asking for the market value that I think the artist is worth, and they've been offered at a much cheaper rate from another agent, all I'm doing is laying the ground for the other agent to walk in and get the booking.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you come to me for intense representation. For me to offer that intense representation, being represented by multiples in the same marketplace, which is I work predominantly for licensed premises, I have a phenomenal relationship with BBC. The reason being, I've got great respect for the people that are the owners and the people that run them. I've known them for decades. In fact, the owner of BBC has literally been my unofficial uncle and has basically employed me as an artist for nearly my entire career. So for me not to have any trust in him would be ridiculous. And I think Ali, for example, is a divinely sensitive person that really wants the best for her acts.
Yeah, she's
And she does a
lovely.
great job.
Yeah, she's gorgeous.
So the point is that outside of my realm of work, which is, as I said, licensed premises predominantly, I get corporate and private shows or weddings or whatever sent to me based on the quality of the acts and the way they're admired in the game, or there's demand in the game. So, but when it comes to my direct opposition, I can't understand why you'd be with three different agents that are finding into the same marketplace. And more importantly, I'm very aware that the other agents are not charging the same market value that I am, and therefore I'm at a disadvantage. I mean, it's like talking about Myer versus Aldi versus Costco.
Yeah.
There's different money divisions. Well, as far as I'm concerned, anybody that works for me is in Myer, in a
Yeah.
department store of the highest quality. It's not buying in bulk Costco, and it's certainly not the alternative brand available from Aldi at a much cheaper rate.
Yeah.
That's the way I work. So the best way to contact me is ring me at the office.
Ring you. You
and
want to
just-
be phoned.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's good to know that.
100%. Just ring me and have a conversation. It's like
Yes.
because it's a decision. This is a coupling of things. I don't employ you. Okay, it's a decision that we're going to work together on what your career path is going to be in music. And to me, it is a career, and I do take it seriously, and it's the only way I've been able to exist for near 40 years.
Where do you think, after all your experience, what do you think could happen in the future? I mean, honestly, everything's happened from what you've spoken about over the decades. Like, what do you think would be in demand in the future with the type of acts, or what will change with the venues? Or
Well, maybe it's a dinosauric or prehistoric or Jurassic mentality, but I still think that the ultimate form of entertainment en masse is a live band.
yeah,
I still feel that way. If I'm wrong, the only person that's probably an exception would be the largest grossing audience ever in the history of the MCG was the other night with Ed Sheeran. I mean, we all know that it's one man on stage
Yeah.
with the loop pedal and several microphones. The actual fact is, though, there's hundreds of people that are producing an Ed Sheeran show. Let's be clear about that, right? The recent show by Harry Styles that my girls went to the other night. Again, a live band, live concert arena, hundreds upon hundreds, days and weeks of preparation,
yeah,
from catering right through to bars to merch to ticket staff, everything. I still think that's the ultimate form of entertainment. Obviously, that we're probably going to appreciate, people like you and I, but on a more reduced level, free entry or very minimal door charge, I think, live bands are still great value for money. For those that really care about what they're doing and are delivering a great product, they're worth going to go and see. I have to say that what I'm finding really disappointing as an agent lately is I'll go and see a band that's invited me to a rehearsal room. I walk in, and out of a 6-piece band, there is 5 people reading a tablet. It is impossible. Look, put it this way, I come from a theatre background.
yeah,
I've made 3 motion pictures, feature films, I should say. I've done mini-series, and I've worked on stage at Crown Theatre right through to Regal and many other theatres in between, in some of the biggest productions that Western Australia have seen in the last 3 or 4 years through COVID. Not one of us walk on stage with a tablet,
yeah.
where there's no cheat sheet on the wedge. I don't really understand. And would you buy a ticket for $120 to go and see a show where someone walks out holding their script?
Yeah.
No. The truth is, the reason why we learn our script and we learn to act and react in a theatre show is for the sake of the audience sensibilities. Therefore, how can anybody reading a tablet
Be reading
engage and connect with their audience? I'm not saying that I don't have a couple of notes at my feet when I go to work, but I'm certainly not stuck to it like an umbilical cord.
Yeah.
But if I go and see a 6-piece band and 5 of them I've got tablets, I graciously leave after I hear a few songs,
Yeah.
because anybody can sit there and orchestras sit in a pit and do it.
Yeah.
That's their job, is to read music, but it's far more complicated than being in a band.
Yes.
And over the years, I don't know anybody that can actually say that they're the tablet. And I've actually actually stopped employment with certain members of the Fats over the years that have been too preoccupied with the tablet
Yeah.
instead of learning their stuff eventually even,
Yes.
and then committing to an audience. To
Yeah.
me, it's all about the audience. You live and die. You live and die at the opinion of the audience. Therefore, you should always, and that's what I talk about this quality aspect. That's why you must always strive to be on top of your craft or work at your craft. It's an essential part of it. An essential part of it. So, contact me directly. Make sure you do know your stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, and you're ready to engage an audience. That's the motivation. Playing music as an alternative lifestyle is not the deal. It's still a work.
Yes, it's a job.
Either mentally or physically, it's still a job.
Yes.
And the way I go about my business, and I'm turning 60 this year,
Wow.
is still very much on the level of trying to produce the same level of energy and physical commitment to each job that we go and perform. And I expect the same from the people around me. And fortunately, again, as a perceived leader, people will follow your action, hopefully, with the rest of your team. So I must maintain it because that's what people's level of expectation is of me.
You're looking pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I got pretty crook. So I lost 50 kilo.
Wow.
And that's also been part of that from getting better and being able to maintain myself at this weight range as being quite a positive at this stage of my life too. So that's probably added to my energy levels and my capacity to be able to physically commit to every show.
Yeah.
But, I have to say, though, is that a lot of people in our industry that are in popular bands, some are older than I am and some are just marginally younger than I am. And their physical commitment on stage for what they offer, Darren Reed, Dr. Bogus, Murphy's Law even, they're all, well and truly over 40 and so forth now. I mean, their level of commitment to a job is still very strong.
Yeah, you can do this job for
You can
a
do this
long
job forever.
time.
You can.
You can. I love that.
Yeah, so do I. And you know what? It's great for your mental state as an individual, as a performer, because it keeps you on your toes all the time. There's always something to learn. You can never relax. And also the fact that WAPA's been such a huge bonus to our industry, feeding people that are way beyond their years in experience and the understanding and the capacity to be able to perform music more so than in my day. A lot of what we did back in the day was trial and error. It was, try something. If it didn't work, we'll go back to the drawing board. But we had the option to do so. Now it's so limited, you can't afford to make these mistakes. These kids that are coming out of WAPA, or say kids or people that have been trained at WAPA, they've been fantastic for the industry because the level of musicality that's now being presented to an audience is of the highest order. It's very complete.
Yeah, do you need people to have qualifications before you book them?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's all about talent. And if you can't eye for talent, there was a time, even before Idol, Australia's Got Talent, The Voice, before all those shows, there was a show in Western Australia called Stars of the Future on Channel 7. And I was at primary school. This is back in the 70s.
Wow.
And then later in the 70s, at the cusp of the 80s, was a show called Perth Young Entertainers, or PI. And Louise Anton, I went and saw last Thursday night at Lyrics Underground performing with James Wilson. And she, at 19 years of age, was the host of that show.
Oh, wow.
People from that show still work in our industry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's back from the 80s. There's people there that, unfortunately, most of them are old and frail, but in the 70s were stars of the future. But even before these shows, I actually even thought about creating a talent show that was going to be voter-based, because the voting thing had already started with Big Brother.
Oh, wow.
So I thought there might be a way of
had
structuring it. I actually
same
approached
idea.
Channel 7 at the time because I've had a long tradition with 7.
Yeah.
And because I was involved on the production level with Telethon as a musical coordinator, I was privy to all the audition process. And that is also a bit of a wake-up call. What's right, what's wrong, who's good, who isn't good. And when I say I'm a fan of talent, I am a fan of talent. So when you do see a gem come through the audition process, it's very overwhelming. Like it's fantastic. It's exciting.
Yeah. Can I ask, what if there is like some gems like that, but they're not yet 18? Are you interested in knowing who they are?
It's just difficult because they
or
can't go to licensed premises, which is the
course.
basis of my work.
What you do? Yeah.
At the moment, one of the greatest, most talented children and bands that I've seen forever is Jaden Tedeschiori, who won the Best New Talent at Wham last year. The kid at, I think, 13, 14 years of age was travelling the world with School of Rock. He was in the Australian touring show of School of Rock as a juvenile. Now he's got a band called Lights Out, and they did a warm-up before they did a support for the Gobbles reunion that was only about a month or so ago. And the band walk out and they're playing stuff that even I would have difficulty playing. Their proficiency on their instruments is extraordinary. But the parents have to be there. Some venues are resilient, you know what I mean? Because you're in an environment where there's a lot of drinking going on. People aren't really behaving in an orthodox manner.
Yeah.
So it is awkward to get them out there, but we try and give them as many opportunities as possible. Because at 15, if they're playing that well together and are that interested, can you imagine what it's going to be like by the time they turn 18?
Yeah, incredible.
And another example was Luke Stamenkovic was playing in a band at 17 years of age, and the first gig they played at for me was at Black Betty's. So Luke goes on stage, that first gig, the band kills it, and his playing ability is next level, as we know. Luke also plays with Millhouse and also with Felix, and does a lot of studio work as well, and with Johnny Reid and many others. Now, Luke was 17 at the time. The next morning, I got a phone call from the manager of the nightclub, and he said, "Is the lead guitarist 17?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Don't bring him back. Either they find a replacement until he turns 18, we can't have him back at the nightclub."
Wow. It's just how it is.
Just the way it was. It's not my choice.
Exactly.
This is what's being imposed. Because people that have a liquor license, nightclub, tavern or pub, they're very concerned about maintaining etiquette.
Yeah, of course.
At all times. They have to be so careful about what they do at their venues. So if that's the fallout from it, which is a bit of a negative. And I have to say that the more live experience, the better. But also never forget one thing, there's great value in consistent rehearsing. The level of familiarity between all the players involved in a band or even for a soloist or duo or whatever, never stop rehearsing. You can never get to a stage and go, I just can't be bothered. And a lot of people do it these days, thinking, I got the tablet, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, you remove those comfort zones and put yourself right out on the ledge. It's amazing what you can come up with for an audience. And again, it's for the audience's sake.
Yeah.
It's for the audience's benefit. If we lose sight of the fact of what the audience is requiring or wanting, you've missed the boat. You're out.
Yeah. So if somebody does call you and they want to work with you, what's the next step then? Will you ask them to send you?
Well, I asked them to send me what experience they've got in a bio, so I can use it as a bit of a precursor. I need a Word document of every song they're actually performing and the cover of who they're covering. So sometimes, for example, there might be 2 or 3 or 4 different versions of a song. I want the version that you're covering, or if you've made a hybrid up, just let me know where you're leaning on a Word document. I need photographs that are relaxed. See, one thing also is at the moment, like people have got this serious look on their face.
Yeah.
I can see bands looking like, I mean, if you went and saw the band, you'd probably be happy to see your car in the car park afterwards.
Yeah.
I mean, really intimidating, which might suit what the band is. But we're talking about the commercial, very commercial, where it's going to be warm, inviting. So think about the spirituality of what you're going to try and present with the photograph. Okay? So I want one relaxed and I want one that's probably a bit more dressed up just in case there is a eligibility for private and corporate work or weddings or whatever the case may be. And can I just tell you that, again, one of the greatest mistakes that people are falling into with the music industry, trying to promote themselves, that is that they're forever recording covers and putting them on their Facebook page. But it's per annum costs prohibitive. They're not your songs.
Yeah.
It's a copyright issue. If you're playing your own original stuff, go for broke. But you cannot use, even when the tribute shows are using images of the band, their logos or interpretations of their logos. I've seen tribute bands send me stuff where they've actually filmed themselves and then layered the original track over the footage. You know, like Adele was playing at Subi Oval But if you drove past the Astor Theatre, she was also appearing at the Astor Theatre. There was a photograph of her up there.
Do you like it if they put it on YouTube and then send that to you?
Not really. I don't want to use it because I don't want to get fined.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel it's a bit naff. I mean, can I just say that after 40 years, if people don't believe what I'm actually trying to sell them is correct or close enough to their brief, I shouldn't be in the job.
Yeah.
Seriously. I understand that people would like a lot more of this show and tell stuff, but if you're covering somebody else's stuff, you've got to have license to do that
I'm pretty sure on YouTube you can because that once the
for
song...
a limited amount of time. There's time spans available, apparently.
Yeah.
I only found this out recently.
Oh, okay.
So there's like excerpts. For example, Matt, who does a fair bit of work at Night Owl, Matt's got it down to a fine art where the slots that he uses in a medley of songs to make up a film clip are exactly the right allotment before it breaches copyright.
Yeah.
Okay? I don't need the video. I'd prefer to see you face to face.
Yeah, good.
And the other aspect of it too is that you're going to send me 1 or 2 songs, but how many hours do you play per night? 3 or 4 hours. You might be sending me the 2 best songs that you perform, but you're going to be able to sustain that for maybe 4 hours.
Yeah.
That's what I need to know about.
Yeah, great.
There's no point me finding out the first time I send you out after listening to 2 songs on a video that sound very pleasant and, dare I say, auto-corrected. Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay? And then find out that you sang great for 2, but you barked like a walrus for the next, 3 hours of the gig. The very fact of, finding out what is, people that want to see a face-to-face audition, I'd prefer to do that. Then I can actually tell every client, I've seen them.
Oh, so they actually come and sing for you in person?
I go and see them.
Oh, you go and see them?
I go and see them.
Performing. Oh, okay.
I see bands in rehearsal rooms all the time. I see anybody that wants to come and see me. And the only time that will ever change is if the referral or there is familiarity with that person from previous work they've done.
Yeah,
But
that's
seriously,
great.
I have that level of investment. So whoever comes to me, I visualise. So if any client ever asks me, have you seen them? And I can honestly answer
Say
yes.
yes. Yeah.
Yes, every time. And if I haven't actually seen them, most of the time I've actually worked with them or they've worked for me.
Yeah.
So I know what their inner drive is or their inner the level of talent that I'm dealing with. I must be fully briefed. I feel that you cannot be a decent agent and represent your acts unless you've got that level of investment with them.
Oh, it's amazing. Oh, thank you so much
My
for
pleasure.
your time today. Wow, we've
nice,
chatted
right?
for an hour.
Is that right? Sorry about that.
Don't be sorry.
Yeah.
No.
Make it a 2-parter.
Yeah, part 1 and part 2.
Yeah.
No, it's a real honour because, I mean,
No, I appreciate
there's
it.
not really many people that you can talk to that have been through all those decades of experience and how the scene's changed and evolved and how you've adapted.
But talent hasn't changed.
Yeah, that's the one thing
real,
that hasn't changed
real
over
talent never
time.
changes.
Yeah.
And there's always something fresh tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? And I think that's really exciting about our industry. That's what keeps me motivated. And dare I say it, seeing the level of talent that comes up also keeps me motivated as an artist, keep thinking ahead,
Yeah.
even if I am turning 60 this year.
Yeah. Well, you don't look it.
I feel all right. I feel good.
Yeah, I was quite surprised actually. But I thought, well, if you've been doing this for 40 years,
Yeah.
but still.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, congrats on your amazing career.
Appreciate
and
it. And I appreciate this opportunity too.
Oh, no. Do you know what? I just want to say it's really encouraging for everybody to have you say you can do this as a job forever.
You can.
Because, society doesn't tell you that, but you're living
Well, it's
proof,
a shame, isn't it?
living proof that you can.
And our Premier certainly didn't help any regard and respect to us, gave us any regard or respect through COVID either,
Yes.
which was very disappointing.
Yes.
Because we're all taxpayers.
Yeah, exactly.
We're all ABN holders,
But not taken seriously.
but not taken
Yeah.
seriously enough. Really?
Yeah.
Like, my God.
Yes.
And people should think about that next time there's an election
Yeah.
because it was a really
was tough.
massive wake-up call to show
Yeah.
you where we're at.
Yeah, and how much musicians are valued.
Well, they are valued. It can't always be about oil, gas and mining. Seriously. Seriously, like people need great restaurants to go to, coffee shops to enjoy, sport to give them the thrill, the excitement of going to see live music, to loosen up. People need their social life to be enhanced quality wise, and we're part of that.
Exactly.
It's an essential part of society's psychology, I think,
bringing
and
joy.
spirituality.
Absolutely.
100%.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing with us
Pleasure.
today. Thank you.
Thank you.